Welcome to the podcast series, Irish by the Grace of God. And here's your host, Tony Gormley.
Great news, everybody. Irish by the Grace of God have now got a badly needed sponsor. GetDigs.ie are an Irish company that specialise in rental accommodation on a Monday to Friday basis. And homeowners can rent out a room in their home for part of the week and still avail of the government's rent a room scheme and earn up to 14,000 per annum tax-free. That's 14 grand. That's a serious incentive. They also have a presence in the UK with getdigs.co.uk, and their homeowners can earn up to £7,500 sterling per annum tax-free for renting out a room. And now they're also launching in the USA with a website called 5sleeps.com. That's the number 5 followed by sleeps.com, 5sleeps.com. So check out the websites for more details and make contact with them. Okay, welcome to an episode of Irish by the Grace of God. My guest today is a Mr. Don Tobin from Drogheda in Ireland. Before we kick off, I have to say up front that I know Don from many moons ago when we worked together in summer jobs, and then he left our shores, and he might say that I didn't keep in contact, and he'd be right. So you're very welcome, Don. Long time
Tony,
no see.
thanks a lot. Oh yeah, well, you know, we have to try and catch up again someday, but frankly, I'm not too pushed.
Okay, well, you're up front anyway. That's good. So, I'll take you back to your, earlier days and growing up in Ireland. What was that like for you? Going to school, your education, and maybe a bit about the area you grew up in and stuff like that.
Wow. Yeah, well, I got to try and shake the memory a bit because I was born in 1960, Tony. Can you believe it? 62 now.
Yes,
You
I
can.
can.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But I was actually born, I was trying to think about this. I was actually born in a house, which
Wow.
probably explains an awful lot, doesn't it? I was born in the house, yeah, in Ballymun in Dublin. That was the family home, the first one.
Wow,
And
I never knew
Yeah.
that. So you were originally from Dublin.
Well, Tony, when we get to talk, you like talking about yourself, but you don't really ask me any questions.
Okay.
But Ballymun, yeah, that's right. And then, no, the first one was Ballymun, and then I've no memory of it. And then we moved to an aspiring up-and-coming suburb called Clondalkin in
Wow.
Dublin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can remember that a bit more. Not much, though, because it's all in the 60s, and you know what the 60s were like.
Yeah.
And I do remember, though, I tell you what I remember, the first time the colour TV came. I think we all have that memory. And I used to love watching Pot Black. Do you still have it over there? You know the snooker?
No, that's
Gone.
Yeah.
Well, Pot Black in black and white. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
And Ray Reardon is about to go for the pink. And that would be the ball in the top right-hand corner of your screen. All you can see is grey.
Yeah.
7 shades of grey. And then in came the colour TV, and it was like an explosion. I can just remember as a kid. It was the same feeling I had when I went on the Barrier Reef for the first time in Australia, you know, struggling with the snorkel and go horizontal and get that explosion of colour. I can remember that so distinctively.
Yeah, what I remember about the TVs back then is that the kids were the remote controls. The father would give you a nudge with his foot to change the channel.
That's right.
Yeah. But go on anyway.
Well, we were actually a lot more, you know, under the thumb of our. He didn't even have to nudge; he just grunted, and we knew. Yeah, but then we moved to a Julianstown, which is where I'm from. Drogheda was just the nearest town, but actually, I'm a Meath man from County Meath. Droghed's County Loud, as
nice
you probably
area.
know.
Yeah, nice area.
And so I'd probably consider myself a country boy, which is where I kind of grew up in Julianstown.
Very good. And then in terms of education, primary school, secondary school, I know you went to uni.
I can't remember much about primary other than I did hit Julianstown, I guess, just for the last year and a half of primary. And I remember going in, and I don't know what it was like, but there was three levels. There was the mid section, there was the top section to the left, and another section to the right. And I didn't realize when he put me in the mid, that's kind of the middle of the road. You haven't been decided yet whether you're good or bad.
Sure.
And
yeah.
I answered a question. I was put into the top section, and I realized that was the good section. So, I got a promotion on day one. But secondary, I remember secondary very well. I went to St. Joseph's. I think if you're in Julianstown, that side of Drogheda, you went to either St. Mary's or St. Joseph's, the usual Christian schools. And I think Mum picked St. Joseph's because they had apparently a better academic record.
Okay.
So she clearly wanted me to get above my station.
And we all know that didn't happen.
Well, there were a few setbacks.
Okay, so St. Joseph, yeah. So you obviously got the bus in, the bus in from Julianstown.
Yeah, these days you hold your children's hand, don't you? You're afraid of everything, but then your mum would kick you out the door and away you go, and you have to cross that busy road.
Yes,
I think it's a shocking busy road. And you're taking your life into your hands sometimes. But with 5 kids, one's dispensable. Let's face it.
Still got 4.
That's okay. The back seat of the car is a little better.
Yeah, and just in terms of secondary school, did you enjoy it? How was it for you?
I enjoyed leaving it.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, there are people I've met, and they loved their schooling years, and they'd go back to these get-togethers every year. I couldn't be arsed. And I've no friends from that era. I wasn't a very popular kid. Don't say anything. But I have no unhappy memories, but I don't have glorious memories at the same time. Sure, it was okay.
Yeah. So then finished school and up to Dublin to university.
Yeah, UCD.
Yeah.
Up to UCD, and that was interesting because, I guess I'd called myself from a lower middle class family, but then everyone at that time was the same, Tony.
Yeah.
Everyone had the same number of kids, the one car, dad's working, mum's at home, little house. No one really was distinguishable from anybody else. We were all. Ireland was homogenous at that time, I think, and of course, being from that kind of lower middle class background, parents couldn't afford me and my brother at the time to live in Dublin, so we had to commute, and that meant up at 6:15 every morning, and in dad's car at 6:30, the Volkswagen Beetle, and getting up to Balbriggan and just flying, and you can see the train on the coastline because the road runs parallel to the railway track.
Yeah.
The old road, and said, "Dad, hurry! You got to beat the train. It's coming in now." And we'd be on that train till 8:30 at Sydney Parade or something like that. And then Brian and I would have to run up the road for the first class at 9 o'clock.
Wow.
And that was going there. And it was the same coming back.
Yeah.
Huge commutes, but we didn't know any different. But when you look back on it, you go, no wonder I failed the subject.
I blame your father.
I blame so many people. I wish I could blame you, but I didn't know you then.
Okay, and again, uni, enjoyable times?
Uni was more enjoyable, but because I didn't invest myself in living up there, I couldn't really enjoy the social scene of a university.
Yeah.
I was back home, quick dinner, and I did a Bachelor of Science, and I did very challenging subjects. In second year, I did chemistry, biochemistry, pharmacology. They're all fairly intense, lab-based. I had basically an afternoon off a week, so it was very, very full on. And then with the commute distance, it was hard to really get into it. But I did kind of enjoy it. I enjoyed it better than school. But once more, no friends from it.
Yeah. And those subjects you just spoke, pharmacology, all the pharma stuff, that's huge in Ireland now at the moment. So it'd be very relevant.
Yeah, I was ahead of my time, Tony, clearly.
You were, yeah, clearly.
You know, what can I say?
So again, you finished college and you went straight in to work, basically.
Yeah, I did do work before. We did a lot of summer work, remember? In fact, that's, I think, where I met you.
That's right, yeah.
I think because you had to work as well because there was no money.
Yeah.
So you're encouraged to keep working. And I think my first job was picking tomatoes with the local farmer. I still remember that smell of, you know, do you ever buy vine ripened tomatoes on the vine?
Yes,
And
yeah.
you get that smell. It brings back that memory. But and I remember we put our first CVs together. Do you remember your first CV, Tony? And you had to put on what have you worked during the summer? You had no bloody experience, so you put down everything. And I remember putting down, 75 to 76 summer tomato picker. And then I looked at my brother's equivalent one, and he put down trainee horticulturalist.
Yeah, but I remember starting my summer work at 14. Every summer from 14 onwards.
Well, I do remember, I do know your father. I could believe that.
Thanks for that. Anyway, so go back to we first met in Butlins. We were cellarmen in Dan Lowry's bar. So
that's right.
I know I worked 4 summers in a row, end of secondary school and through college, but they were great times.
Oh, look, and you talk about I've no friends from school, I've no friends from uni, but boy do I have friends from Butlins.
Sure.
It's amazing, isn't it? And your brother, of course, is one of my best friends, and you're okay. And but I think I met you in my last year. I did 3 summers in a row. And it was 79, I think. Would that be right, Tony? 1979?
Yeah, because I recall distinctly in 79, the 2 of us and 2 barmaids went up to Dublin to see AC/DC live with Bon Scott, dressed in our leather trousers, PVC, our PVC leather jackets, and great concert, great gig. Came back the next day very late, and the 4 of us went into the bar. The manager was waiting for us. He allowed the 2 barmaids in. He stopped us and said, "You're fired." But we got reinstated a day later, I think. So it was
well, we did, because the next door neighbor was high up in the organization. You probably never knew I got you reinstated. It's who you know, Tony. Remember that. No, that's true. And this is a story. I was enjoying that year so much, and we had our first girlfriends, I think, Tony, and all that, and it was just fabulous. Yeah. It was just fabulous. And because I failed pharmacology, I should have just repeated it, and you'd get it, no problem. And then you go on to do the honours degree, which is a 4-year course. But, I decided not to do it. I picked fun over my future. And I ended up having a general degree, a 3-year general degree, which at the time, given 18% unemployment in Ireland, that was a real dumb thing to do. But when I look back at it, I go, oh my God, I picked crack.
Yeah.
Over my future.
Crack trumps future.
Don't mention Trump.
Okay. But wow, yeah.
It's amazing. And it actually, without me knowing it, because if you get on to my real work, it changed probably the direction of my life, because you don't know what's going to happen in your life until you start getting your first jobs. And let's face it, some people have their life mapped out, because they're doctors, you know, there's a career path, but not me, not you. You know, we just kind of fell into things, I guess.
Yeah.
Life has a funny way of working itself out anyway.
Yeah. And just Butlins, obviously, as an entertainment campus closed down many years ago. Are you saddened to see that?
Yeah, you know, every time I go home, because we lived on the Butlins Road, the Mosney Road, I always go down. I don't go into it, but I have a look, and the memories flood back, I have to say. Oh, what you talk about AC/DC. I'll talk about that later at the concert, but do you remember? I think I turned you on to AC/DC. I'm sure I did.
No. I turned
I'm
you
sure
on to...
I bought If You Want Blood You Got It, the live album.
No, you've got
Are
it
you
wrong.
saying it's you?
I did.
Okay. Well, I'll give you that because, you know, I think I have to. It's your podcast.
I could edit it out.
But I tell you, if that's true, wow, what a journey. And I do remember a memory of the two of us. By the way, I've never admitted they were PVC. To this day, I say they were leather trousers. Maybe you just need a bit more resolve. You need to learn to lie over a 40-year period, Tony.
Okay.
But I remember we went into the staff disco, armed with the LP, if you remember, the leather the pleather trousers, the black T-shirt. I think I had my studded wristband on. And we, you know, and at the time, there they were going, the girls and the boys, you know, don't blame it on the sunshine, don't blame it on the moonlight, don't blame it on the good times, blame it on the boogie. And they're going Princeton and prancing, and we marched up to the DJ, side one, track one. And on comes Whole Lot of Rosie. The place clears, and I don't know what we did, but we thought we were bloody good.
We were cool. We were really cool.
We were different. I think you were on my shoulders.
That's right. And I recall I knocked your glasses off onto the floor.
It was you.
Yeah.
I've knocked them off myself doing the Weirmit. Yeah. I knocked them off at a Horse Lips concert once, and they went flying up in the air, and I had to clear the mosh pit. Can you imagine clearing a mosh pit so I can recover my glasses? But I got them.
Yeah, there were good times. There were good times. But so then your last year in Butlins, you had to grow up then and get a job. A real job.
Yeah, I did, and I got a job at a US
and you didn't grow up.
The growing up is well, if you ask my kids, they'd say nah. But yeah, I did. You know, it's a case of, again, my mum rang someone, and I got the opportunity. You have to walk through the door, but it's so important to try and open up doors, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Ireland was phenomenally difficult. And that's why my cohort were still doing another year of, you know, a degree to get an honours degree. And I've got this general degree, but I got the job with an American multinational. And
wow.
You know, this lady, she fabulous. You know, you talk about mentoring now, don't you? You know, she was my mentor before the word existed.
Yeah.
I had so much respect for this woman. She was so smart, so tough, so fair. So, you know, and she really pushed me forward, because you can be reluctant in your early years to take on responsibility, can't you? You become a supervisor. You don't want to do it. You know, they say the difference between a boy and a man is responsibility, and you don't want to take it on. But she gently coaxed me, and you know, in 8 years there, I reached management level. I was one of the youngest managers in the group. They had places in Boston, in Mexico, in the Netherlands. So I was a very young manager, I think 26 years of age. And that entitled me to the company car. And one memory I have is going back home to see mum and dad with the brand new, it wasn't a Corolla, Tony, at the time. It was the one above it, the 1.6 litre. I can't remember. Camry or Celica? I can't remember.
Yes.
The one above the Corolla, which was 1.3. And I remember driving home into the driveway, and this brand new 1.6 litre Toyota drives in front or behind my dad's 1.3 litre 5-year-old Corolla. And I have to say, I was embarrassed. I remember feeling embarrassed. And of course, my parents were not. They were,
Delighted, yeah.
overjoyed because you want to see your kid. Now that I've got them, you do want to see them move on, even go better than you. Don't care about that. Just go forward. But I do have that feeling of embarrassment. Why am I at 26 have a better car than my dad has been working for 30 years? There you go.
Yeah. But you always struck me, and it may have something to do with you progressing in management. You always struck me, even at an early age back in Butlins, as being super confident.
Yeah, look, I think that came from my air guitar. I was a great proponent of the air. Do you know I went into the air guitar championships in Australia? Do you know that story? I think you do.
Yeah, I don't know whether you should mention this on a podcast.
It was the inaugural air guitar, and I qualified for the Queensland finals.
Wow.
And lost out. But yeah, I considered it an art form by then. So you're right, I haven't grown up.
That's a great distinction. But so you're now 26, you're in management in Dublin, have a nice fancy car in whatever, what would that have been, 1985, 1986?
87, the beginning of 87, I would say.
Yeah, which would have been a big deal because nobody at 26 would have had a car back then.
Not a new one, not a new
one.
1.6 litre, no.
So were you happy at this stage, or where did, emigrating come into the picture? Were you thinking about it for a long time? What
I was very happy, and I had the band as well. I noticed you've got a guitar there. It's probably for show. You can see my one there as well. But
yeah, mine's for show, for sure.
All right, but my biggest hobby, as you know, is music. My passion always has been music. From listening to it, as a 14, 13 year, watching Top of the Pops and watching Slade and T-Rex and all those, and then really discovering the music I loved, which was rock music. And 4 bands saved my ass growing up in that rural Ireland. You're giving me all these dreams and this huge world stage, and I loved Tin Lizzy, but who didn't? Who didn't? I loved Queen, but 70s Queen, not 80s Queen, early Queen. I loved Alice Cooper. Oh, gee. And of course, I used to play it so loud in a small room, and I'd be in front of the mirror honing my air guitar skills. And Dad would always be telling me to turn that music down, turn it down. And one day he just came into the room because I couldn't hear him, and he found me mid-pose in front of the mirror. And I froze, and he froze, and all you could hear in the background was, "I love the dead." Well, he quietly left. I'm sure he thought he'd lost his second son, to the devil. And of course, Akadaka, AC/DC, and from listening to it to seeing it, the first gig. Can you remember your first gig, Tony?
My first gig was actually, I think you could have been at it, with my brother in the stadium, Rory Gallagher.
Oh, brilliant.
And we had restricted seats on the ticket. And actually, that's a good story. We went in anyway, and we were way up the back, and we were behind Marshall amps. And Rory came on.
The PA, the entire PA.
That's right.
Which meant you couldn't see a feckin' thing. That's what
we couldn't see a thing. And then he came out, and the first lick of the guitar, we looked at each other and said, so we ran down, and the bouncers came out, and we burst through the bouncers up beside the stage. And the same night, it was a great gig. Same night, we queued to meet Rory. Now I was only 16, right? And I was next in the queue, and yourself and my brother Jerry were behind me. And I went up to Rory, and he was lovely, and he was trying to get me to talk, and I was completely starstruck. And he was saying, "What do you think of the gig?" And I just couldn't talk. And I just handed him 3 things, which I have to this day: the Irish flag, which he signed, my bus ticket, my school bus ticket, he signed, and the ticket of the concert, and I have all of them. And then he came in, and I could hear he asking about guitars, and I was going, why didn't I say something?
Well, you were 16, so it's forgivable. Oh, you know, talking about busting the bouncers to get to the front, I did that with my 4-year-old kid. We went to the Wiggles in Australia, and we were in row Y of a Z. And the boy, he's going, Daddy, I can't see a thing. And I said, don't worry, son, I'm going to show you something. And the minute the Wiggles came on, we tore down, slapped the bouncer to the side and straight to the front and started the mosh pit.
Again, something probably you shouldn't be saying on a podcast. So music is a huge, you know, hobby.
But can I talk about the first gig I saw?
Oh, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought this was about me, by the way. But my first gig was Daleyman Park, and I'm sure lots of Irish saw that first. I think it was the first outdoor concert. I'm not sure about that, but the headline act was Tin Lizzy. And to see Brian Robertson, Tin Lizzy line up, it was like they were at their peak with probably the best lineup ever. But then there was a band, Four from the Top, that hugely impressed me. A band called the Boomtown Rats. Wow. And I can remember Bob Geldof holding up. They had just released Looking After Number One. It still hadn't charted, so they're unknown.
Yeah.
And he holds up the album and says, I want you to buy my album because I want to be rich. I really do. Well, I think I made him rich, you know.
Yeah.
But of course, the best gig I ever went to, that was the second one. The best was the one we went to with AC/DC.
Oh,
I mean, you're talking about Bon Scott.
Yeah.
1979. Unknown band. They played in 400 people? They were unknown, but a tremendous gig. I think for the gig to be your best ever, it has to be in those younger years when you're truly a fan, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think like we were nearly thrown out that night for jumping off tables. Up above, we were, if you recall, we were on the balcony. But then when Angus came down on Bon Scott's shoulders,
Yes.
You managed to hit the guitar.
Well, I saved Bon's life. I didn't realize he was on his second bottle of whiskey, and Angus was a teetotaler. So that's probably why Angus was okay. He's on top, but he's stone cold sober. But you're right. They went past us, and it was on the balcony with 4 deep, and the crowd behind me, well, 4 people, surged. And actually, Bon was going over the edge. It probably wasn't a legal height at the time. He's going over the edge, and Angus was bare-chested by this stage with the guitar strap. I pulled the guitar back, and then I slapped it.
Yeah.
And I went, ah! And then away he went. Let there be rock.
Wow.
You know, I searched the next album for, we'd like to thank the anonymous Irishman for saving my life. Nothing.
That's typical.
Yes. But to answer your question about happiness, I was happy in Ireland because I'd gone from singing music to playing music, and I was in a band called Swing 42 throughout, you know, the 83 through to the week before I emigrated, and that was great, playing jazz music. Jazz was quite popular in Ireland in the 80s, early mid 80s, and we were playing Django Reinhardt, Stephen Grappelli, that swing Parisian jazz, and we even got to France because one of the members was going out with a French girlfriend. Her parents owned a holiday home on the island, so, and they loved us, and that's when we introduced the Pogues, who were big in 87, 86, 88. We introduced the Pogues music and started doing Irish music, and we brought that into our repertoire and slowly began to move from the jazz into Irish music. So I was quite happy with my little car and my little band and my friend.
So what was the catalyst to move?
Well, it wasn't economic. It wasn't even unhappiness. I guess if I can sum it up by, I was saying to myself, I could see my life mapped ahead for 10 years. Ireland was quite depressed economically, you know, 18% unemployment. And it was hard to go on get your career on a tangent and try something else. Because if something came up and you went, oh, I might try that, there'd be 20 people amply qualified to get the job. So I could see my life mapped ahead of me, and it wasn't a bad life, but I remember saying, is this it?
Yeah.
What's on the other side? What's on the other side of that mountain, I wonder. And I guess it was that curiosity, that desire to go, oh, come on, there's got to be more, or at least have a look at what's outside little old Ireland. And I guess that was the motivation for me. I was still single, and I reckon if I'd stayed a few more years, inevitably I probably would have got married with kids. And once that happens, it's much more harder to emigrate, when you got others to think of. Whereas I only had myself. And I guess when I look back on it, though, that 28 year, I was 28, and it was kind of brave.
Very, yeah.
I do it now, but as you get older, of course, you get more cautious. You lose your bravery. When you're younger, you can be very brave. But it was, and I remember the day leaving so well. I remember scraping the ice off my dad's windscreen. I don't miss the cold weather or the grey skies, but I scraped the ice, and the parents brought me up, and I was just heading for departures. And I said to my parents, oh, look, I just need to go into the toilet. But it was an excuse. I started crying in front of a mirror in the toilet. I was being hit by this. What am I doing? I was being hit by trepidation, I guess. And I pulled myself together, slapped myself around, which I like doing. And I came back out again. And as I hugged Dad, and then as I hugged Mum, she could feel me going again. And her last words to me before I left were, go now. And I guess it was just that final push. Wow. And once I got that final push, that was the hardest thing to do, I think. Just that. And I guess that's what stops a lot of people from doing it. A lot of people might think about it, and it's not for everyone, but you do have to be at least then you had to be a bit brave, I think. Maybe now it's not so hard. I don't know. Video conferencing, phone calls for me back home were phenomenally expensive. You could only do it maybe once every 2 weeks or something, and for 20 minutes off peak with no video.
I think brave is a good word, because I remember thinking at the time, geez, this guy has a good job. He's a manager. He's a car. He's doing very, very well, and he's moving. Whereas you'd associate emigration back in the 80s with somebody who is on the dole, has nothing, whereas you were secure and jumped, whereas the majority going back then had nothing.
And not only that, but all my friends around me would have picked me as the last person to go. I don't know if you remember me then. I was insufferable. Well, not changed, but I wore my Irishness on a sleeve. I was so patriotic. The rugby would come on at home, and I'd be putting tricolours on the wall in advance. I drove my mother crazy.
You used cut your grass, and you'd cut era on the back lawn.
I did. If we had a bigger lawn, I might have cut Ireland, but I used to cut era into the lawn. That's right, and I'd go up on the roof and take photos. I wore my Irishness on a sleeve. That's something that's changed a lot. That patriotic person has kind of gone, but he's been replaced by an Irish person. But the point I'm making is, I was probably the last candidate in our whole cohort that people would pick to leave.
Correct.
And yet I did. I left. Yeah.
Okay. So, Don, you leave your parents at the airport. You get on the plane. What was the plan? Had you people waiting for you there? Had you a job lined up, or were you just going on spec?
I had a brother in Australia. My brother was there, and he did sponsor me. And you look back in that, and eternally grateful for that, because it enabled me to get PR. Because I don't think I would have gone without PR, because I think it would have narrowed my options for securing employment. or at least decent employment.
PR, what do you mean by PR?
Permanent residency.
Okay.
Like the green card in America.
Yes, yes, yes.
Right? So I got it because he sponsored me. I wouldn't have got it because essentially in Australia, you got in if you fit that number of occupations they needed.
Sure.
Nurses, whatever it is, and welders and so on. But if someone sponsored you, it meant that if it all turned upside down, they would bail you out. That's the basics of it.
Okay.
So Brian, my brother, sponsored me, and that got me over into permanent residency, which meant I could stay forever, and I had no limitations on job securement except in the public service, because you had to be an Australian citizen to work in the public service.
Okay.
And I couldn't vote. But there you go. And so, but besides that, Brian, I'm sure my brother would agree with this. And you met my brother. We were very vastly different creatures. We were on quite different pathways in life. He was already married young, already had some children. I just barely got out of the leather pants, Tony, and rock and roll. Here I go. So I didn't go there for him, but he did meet me at the airport. He did enable me to stay with some Irish friends. Actually, I knew her from uni, but wasn't a part of the group. But again, it's very nice, isn't it? Because you're just. I think I stayed with them for 3 or 4 weeks, but I knew I'd have to find my own way. I knew this ultimately was my journey.
Yes.
This was just a halfway house until I started going for it. So I guess I had that, but essentially I was on my own.
Wow.
And I had a job lined up.
Yeah, yeah. And then in terms of a job, had you one secured, or we just go out and start the job search?
Oh, the first thing I had to do was find a place to live. It's funny, isn't it? You're starting again. You're almost starting again, and again another decision that had huge repercussions for my life, because remember, it's 1988, so it's the adverts, isn't it, for sharing accommodation. It's
yeah.
Oh, there's no webs, there's no mobiles, and I saw this ad and it said a housemates wanted for 2 people, and underneath it the line said must be into music, and I went, oh, tick and tick. So I went out to them, and that's when I met Stan and Dina. And honestly, I could have had a different experience by going to different people and met a whole different.
Yeah, wow.
It was amazing decisions like that. And they're not thought through, they're random. Life is random as well. And
so one sentence in the ad just captured you.
I must music again.
Yeah.
And Stan was a sax player. He was crap. But anyway, and Dina played a bit of piano but they had a big circle of friends. And a number of them into music, a number of them not, but they were into soccer. Yeah. And again, I used to play soccer in Ireland and Gaelic, and I actually and so through that funnel, it blew out into this ready-made ad war, and I've got 20 friends, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Now, and lots of them have gone, but some of those people I met then are still my friends today.
And that's what? How many years ago? 35
30 years. Yeah, I've been in Australia longer than Ireland, so I crossed that threshold a number of years ago. So you'd have to say they are my old friends, and 2 in particular, they were musos as well, part-time like us all, chancers like us all, but it got me that.
Brilliant.
I found my tribe, I guess, and I look at some Irish. I've met lots of Irish out here over the years, and some make it and some don't, Tony. Yeah. Some come and they're gone in 4 months.
Yes.
And I think when I came out, I made myself a promise. I said 1 year at least. At least, I don't care if you're crying in the gutter. Give yourself a year, because I knew homesickness would set in.
Yeah.
And it did. And it did.
Yeah.
And some people succumb to it too quickly, and they go back. Some people come out and they stay 2 years and they go back. Some people stay and then have kids, and they want the kids to be brought up in Ireland, and they go back. I've known some people they'd go back home for holidays and they miss it so much that they go back and then realize winter is coming and no one's got time for them anyway, drizzle and dark days, and they come back out to Australia. There's a whole of experiences, but I think one success factor is you find your tribe, you find friends. It's so important in life, isn't it?
And is it necessary that tribe is Irish, or do you try and embed in the Australian culture? I know a lot of people who go, and the first, they might go to New York. The first place to go is the Irish community, the Irish bars.
Yeah.
What about Australia?
There's nothing wrong. It's everyone's journey, but I went the opposite. I actually ignored the Irish diaspora in Australia, in Brisbane. I ignored them. I felt I am not going to settle in this country if I go to Irish bars and cry into my pint of Guinness. And so I shied away from the Irish because I felt it was so important to meet Australians. I wasn't in Australia to meet Irish people.
Yeah.
I was in Australia for a new experience. Why go into Irish pubs and listen to the Blarney that you could have listened to in Dublin? And so I ignored it, and as a result, I don't have Irish friends out here. They would have gone home anyway. It's very difficult.
Wow.
They're so transient.
Yeah.
By nature, whereas the Aussies are staying. So no, I took the opposite of some people in New York, and I didn't turn my back. I just felt if I went down that path, I would not settle.
Okay.
And so I embraced the Aussies, and
did the Aussies embrace you?
Well, I know you think that
you're not a very embraceable person.
Look, I don't like hugs very much, unless it's Rory Gallagher. I'd hug him. He was a small fellow, wasn't he, Rory?
Rory was small, but he filled the stage. He filled the stage.
He filled that stage. He was a dynamite guitarist. But anyway, look, this is a question about, I guess, how well are the Irish thought of in a place like Australia? I can't speak for America or Canada. I've been there, you have been, but I'm sure you'll have people on your podcast from that neck of the woods, and they'll give their experiences. And then I think a lot of the experiences would be similar, but everyone has their own journey as well. But yes, I would say in Australia, the Irish have enormous currency.
Go away. Wow.
It is changing because the face of Australia is changing. The main migrant communities now are Indians and Chinese. So, but among the Anglo-Celtic nation, almost certainly. But it's funny, Tony, when I first came out and I said to myself, 40% of Aussies have an Irish heritage. And I'd expect, I'd be seeing Irish symbols everywhere. Nothing. Queen Victoria statues, Union Jacks. All the streets were Elizabeth Street, Alfred Street, Edward Street, Margaret Street,
Oh, yeah.
All English, quite English in nomenclature, in statues, in flags. And I remember saying to myself, where's the Irish heritage? They talk about it. It took me a while to figure it out. But the Irish heritage for me in Australia is in the people.
Yes.
When I started talking to the people, and I know New Zealand quite well as well, and I would say Aussies are more like the Irish. New Zealand are more like English.
Wow.
And Scottish, which had a bigger influence in that. Whereas the Aussies, they're different to us. They're more direct than us.
Yeah.
They're more direct. I keep noticing that when I go back home, but they're kind of cheeky. They don't take themselves serious. They love a slagging. They love a drink, all that kind of thing. So they have that kind of warm, embracing nature to a point. The Irish take it much further, but yeah, that's to me is the Irish heritage. It's not in buildings. It's not in statues. It's in the psyche of the people,
yes.
Or at least the white European people.
Yeah. So there's more. They're more into the crack, we'll say, They get us.
They get us, and me being Irish has never been. It certainly hasn't been a hindrance.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not sure if it ever opened doors, by the way, but what it opens up is an immediate kind of friendship, an immediate nice feelings on the other side. If they know you,
yes,
conversely to that, I don't know, we'll get into my career, I guess, but I do a lot of work in Malaysia, in an Asian country. And conversely, I always say, oh yeah, I've come in from Brisbane, but guess what? I'm Irish. And it's like, oh yeah, Irish. Oh, you too. St. Patrick's Day. There's an Irish pub in town. There's an Irish pub in every town. So you don't have that currency in a place like Asia at all.
Yeah.
It's not there. It's only in a few countries, I think, you'll get that. And we have to thank our forefathers, don't we? It's not my behaviour that got that goodwill. It's the behaviour of all the Irish that came before me.
Yeah.
That got that. And it's probably the same in America, I'd imagine.
So in terms of employment then, where did you start?
I went to my first interview, and the guy sat down. John's passed, but anyway, we're all getting old. But he sat down, and I was used to Irish interviews, pretty full on. And he sat down, and he went, and he put a peanut in his mouth, and he said, "So a lot of troubles in Ireland, aren't there?" And I went, I didn't come here to give you a lecture in Irish history, but that was their impression, because when they did get stories coming over, it was the troubles, it was bombs, it was all that, and they thought Ireland was a war zone.
Yeah. And do you know what? At the time, everywhere around the world, anybody you talked to, that was the only thing that was associated with Ireland.
Then I had to talk about, well, it's in the north, although there has. Well, I was in Dublin when the bomb went off, but but you didn't see it really. It was very localized, wasn't it? But that's what they heard. So that was my first interview. But I got the job on the second interview, and it was as a consultant. And they said, well, would you like to be a consultant? And I'm 28. And I said, well, look, in Ireland, consultants have grey hair, and they're fellows of the institute. And the guy said to me, if you can talk, it'll work. And I went, yeah, I can probably talk.
Yes.
And so I became a consultant in that old quality management industry, ISO 9001, all that.
Very good, yeah.
And the great thing about that job was it brought me all over Australia in 2 years. Every capital, and I was able to look at Australia as a whole, because I always fancied I'd end up in Melbourne or Sydney. But I actually decided, after seeing there's not a bad city in Australia, but I decided Brisbane, it's big enough that you two will pop in on the world tour, but it's small enough that it has that kind of, it's not a city feel.
Yeah.
It's like an American city, I guess. It's got a central CBD, skyscrapers, but then once you go outside that, it's quite open, leafy, lots of room, and so I liked it for that. And of course, the climate. I'm a lizard. I can stay in the sun forever. So that attracted me to staying here as well, having that subtropical climate. So that was the work, I guess, and it was successful. And then after, I think, 8 years of doing that, we formed our own company, which I'm still in today. So it's been going for 20 odd years, and I wouldn't have dreamed about that when I was a younger fella, that I'd eventually have my own company, and I'd be working for myself with employees, trying to leverage into marketplaces and all that sort of thing. And that from that point of view, it's been a very productive journey, the career side of things.
So, and how many? So you formed your own company. How many is in the company?
Well, it was at the time, we built it up to 10.
Wow.
And we had offices in Brisbane and Melbourne. But the problem with consulting, especially if you have to travel, is you take on staff and the first thing you do is pay them. And it's the classic small business conundrum. You end up being the last paid. And plus, it took me away from my family. There were absences, and it did wear us down. And we did agree after about 7 years of trying that if we can't grow it to 30 and get that economy of scale, pare it right back. So we brought it right back. Now it's just me and a business partner. But it's a great vehicle for me to, slide into semi-retirement.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't have to work the 5-day week, 40 contact hours. I might be busy for 2 weeks and not for 2 weeks. And I don't have to work Mondays if I don't want to. So, but that's, I guess, that's the reward for being able to build that company up and have enough irons in the fire to be able to keep it going without trying too hard.
And when you went to Australia, Don, you kept up the music, the playing of the music, and I know you still had some association with the band back in Ireland.
Yeah, well, to tackle the first part, excuse me, Tony, you can edit that out. But to tackle the first part, yeah, these guys, one was a drummer, one was a guitarist, and there was another guitarist, and we formed a band called Pat and the Fat Man, and I was not the fat man, but and when I went to Australia, I was amazed after doing the jazzy stuff in Ireland. I learned at the time there were two sorts of music in Australia. There was pub and rock, and that's all they had. And so I had to learn on the bass to go do 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 over and over again. Keep the note on, keep the note. But we didn't play much, but we all got together a lot, practice a lot, people's parties, we'd play, all that sort of thing. But we never really got into the gig circuit. And part of that reasoning also was settling down a bit. The kids came along later on in the 90s. But yeah, definitely the music was there, but the return of the original band was a watershed moment, because I remember, I think it was 2009, we decided to do a 20-year reunion back in France.
Right.
So we all got together, and it's frightening to see people 20 years on. Some have weathered the storm very well, and others, the years have not been kind, Tony. That's all I can say. But anyway, we got back together. But before that reunion, I always went back to Ireland every 2 years, every 3 years. I'm sorry I never looked you up, but but
you never really liked me anyway. So.
Oh look, I pretend the pretense was good though. You thought I did. But one of the band members, he was living in England. Like of the 5 members, 3 have emigrated. That was the story of the 80s anyway.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
And they're still there. One's in London, one's in France, and he's a professional musician actually, doing all the Riverdance festivals. That's how he makes his money. But he didn't join us at this stage of recording, but the others said, look, when Don comes back, let's try and do our own stuff. We always did covers.
Right.
We never tried to write music and record it. So that's what we did for 3 visits of mine between 2002 2004. We went into a recording studio just for 2 days, and I think we put down 12 tracks and original tracks, which never saw the light of day. Actually, I don't even think my mother's listened to them. But anyway, but it was interesting when you started this podcast, and I said to you, "Do you have any intro music?" And you said, "Oh, you've got a bit of diddly eye." And I said, "Oh, I wrote this Irishy thing, way back. It might fit." And I think you were a bit shocked. Said, "But Tobin, you can't sing," which is also true. And I dusted off this song called "Sea of Green." Do you remember? And I think you listened to it recently, and it kind of fits what you're doing, because it is an immigrant story.
Yeah,
about a guy coming back, and it's set in 1990, the World Cup in Ireland. Because I did come back in 1990 in June, July. And that was what I saw. Everyone was wearing green jerseys. Ireland were in World Cup, first World Cup. Tricolours, you wear green bunting off the houses. It was like a sea of green. And I called the song "A Sea of Green," and it's about an immigrant coming back after 20 years, 30 years, and he's catching up with old friends, but he's sad. He's saying, "Why did I stay away so long? Why? It was only supposed to be for a year or two, and a year turned into 20." And he's getting these regrets. you know. And I think the last verse has, but then of course the second verse, you know, you realize why he left. It was the woman. It's always a woman,
It's
Tony.
always a woman. But
But
sorry, go ahead.
there was something I wanted to say, you know, in the final verse. There's a line that says, "Many dreams of youth somehow don't bear fruit. They say it's meant to be," and it's true. They say it's one of this Aussie palliative care nurse wrote a book called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. You know, imagine being interviewed when you're about to kick the bucket. But anyway, that's what she did, and one of them was unfulfilled dreams. You know, not living your life, not having the courage to live your own life for yourself.
Yeah.
Living it for others, to please others.
Yeah.
And they said, why did I do that? I had so many dreams that never got fulfilled. And while all of us can recognize, well, that's true. Not they all can come true.
Yeah.
But some people, none of them come true. You know, it slide away into just living. And sometimes you got to pull it back and go, well, don't forget some of your dreams. You can.
Yeah.
You can try and aim to fulfill some of those dreams as well. So.
Well, Don, I yes, it's true. I said you couldn't sing, but you sent me on the recording the night before last, and I played it, and I don't give compliments out easily, particularly to you. But I thought it was a fantastic song. I thought
Really?
I really did, yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it on the podcast. And I think it goes on for 4 minutes, and
It's a bit long.
Yeah, but it's a story.
Yeah,
and the lyrics are
an
very,
immigrant
very...
story. It's an immigrant story, actually, and you know. But we had a very good drummer. We had a session drummer, Paul. He was from Intuanua. Do you remember a band Intuanua?
Oh, Leslie Dowdle.
Leslie was the singer, and
Yeah.
Paul was on drums. And Paul's
Wow.
the drummer on that song. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so he lent his chops. He's a brilliant drummer, so at least it's in time.
Oh, it's excellent, and we'll put it on the podcast, obviously, but we'll put it on all the social media sites as well. So now the only problem with that is I want 50% of the royalties.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Which means I'll have to buy you a pint when I come back home.
Well, you never know. Christmas #1.
Oh, who knows?
So, so where are we now? You're coming close to. Have you any regrets, Don, in moving?
Gosh,
or I might phrase it. What do you miss most about Ireland? Or
well, besides the obvious family and friends, you know, that's the obvious one. But you know, as much as I said I stayed away from the Irish, you know, when I came out here, and even sometimes the Irish annoy me. This might be controversial.
I think it will be. I think it will be.
I think you know what happens? I see them trying too hard, and the Irish can see through an Irish person trying too hard. You know, the paddywhackery. They put on the paddywhackery, I call it.
Yeah.
You know, an example would be, I saw this video, I think it was soccer fans, and they're obviously half jarred, but a girl comes out from Victoria's Secret with and they surround her, you know, and start singing, "You've lost that love and feeling," and she's petrified. But the Irish, they're going, "Oh, we're great fun, we're a great crack, and we're a great laugh, and we're doing it." And I find it just cringy when they go too hard, when they elevate their Irishness, and it's not natural. That does annoy me about the Irish. But when it's natural, that's what I miss the most. That sense of Irishness and being surrounded by it, you know?
Yeah.
And when I came back home in May, you know, it was 4 years because of COVID. And that was the longest I've been away from Ireland. So you kind of forget a bit. And when I came back into Dublin Airport, there it was. Straight away, I recognize it. It's a softness. It's
easy. It's just easy, and
a politeness. They're not ready to stab. They're ready to greet.
Yes.
They're coming from a point of view of happy to see you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that being surrounded by that's what I miss. And I'd come home and I just walk to Laytown, another place, and I just love hearing Irish accents around me because I don't hear them here.
Yeah.
It's all Australia over here, and so, and in fact, I went to Ireland, I think in 2018 with my partner and two friends, and she was so looking forward to it, my two Aussie friends. I want you to show us Ireland, Don, and I'm going, oh really? You know, and everyone think, oh, the Irish are so friendly, and you know, all this stereotype of the Irish, and I was trying to dampen it down and say, look, as Bruce Springsteen once said, there's an arsehole on every block. We might meet a few arseholes. But, and so I'd say, you don't know. I'd like that to be your experience, but I can't guarantee anything. So we hit your town on the way down to Dingle, Limerick. Sorry, I didn't look you up, by the way. But anyway, and we're at the traffic lights, and we're trying to get lunch. And obviously they're talking wild Aussie accents and I'm not. And this old lady comes by and can I help you? And oh sorry, we're just looking for somewhere. Well, now if you cross the road and you go down, and there's a lovely pub and they do a lovely soup. Do you like soup? And you like the soda and all this sort of thing. And she's charmed the knickers off them, right? By just being herself.
Yeah.
I stood back in it and I went, that's what I miss.
Yeah.
That's not put on.
Yeah.
That's not paddywhackery. That's her being her.
Genuine.
And that's when the Irish are at the best, when they're just being themselves.
Yeah.
And I think most of all, that's what I miss. I don't get it over here.
Yeah.
And you can't experience it in videos. You can't experience it watching a hilarious video on the Irish Independence website, which often isn't hilarious, by the way. But anyway, you know, the Irish are a peculiar race, and we're a fairly defined race, and you know, you'd have a certain pride in your race. I mean, I've got two kids now, and they're half Irish but all Australian, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
And little Aussie bastards, and you know, they're 25 and 23 now, and I noticed that they recently renewed their Irish passports, so they're not letting go.
Yeah.
And I know Tommy, my son, he's going to be out there next year. He's going to be working in Dublin, and I think quietly they're very proud of the Irish heritage, and they're aware of it because they've been over there enough times, and they've got all the you know 400 first cousins and so on and so forth.
Excellent. So I think we're going to finish up. I've one last question, unless you want to talk a bit further, but Barry's tea, Tato's, or a pint of Guinness, what do you miss most? Have to pick one.
Well, I think you should have put in also bacon and cabbage, because you know that, to me, bacon
and cabbage.
Look, food wise, bacon and cabbage. The first thing my mum does for me when I'm home is bacon and cabbage.
Oh, I love bacon and cabbage.
Yeah. Beyond that, and you can't really get that over. You can, but you can't, but you can, but you can't, because pork out here is different. But beyond that, yeah, I fang for my first pint of Guinness. I won't drink it out here. Partly it's the climate. It's too hot in Brisbane. Guinness is a cold climb beer. So it's all what you call lagers over there out here, I guess. Although we're being invaded by craft beer, honestly, just murderous. But yeah, going into a pub in Drogheda, or even the local Julianstown Inn, and seeing that pint being poured to perfection.
Yeah.
Sitting down and having that first pint, I'd miss that.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Don, it was a pleasure talking to you. And I promise I'll keep in contact.
Well, remember, another regret of the dying, Tony. Talking about, I'm only 62. I'm already obsessed with dying. But another regret is that they didn't keep in touch with old friends.
This is true.
And you know, they're what you might call the golden friendships. You can't make them when you're in your 40s. You can make friends, and I have, but they're not the same.
No,
because
true.
You haven't had those formative years.
The experiences.
experiences of growing up. You're already grown up, and there's nothing wrong. I've got fine, very good friends over here, but those old golden friendships, look, we never will lose touch, and we can be apart a classic 3 or 4 years, and we can pick up where we left off. That classic thing, isn't it? But yeah, we got to keep in touch. Next time I'm over, we're going to meet in the flesh.
Good stuff. Don Tobin, thanks a million, and best of luck with your future.
Thanks, Tony, and just make me rich with that song, okay?
I will.
And famous.
It's good. It's good. Okay,
all right,
ciao.
Tony.
See you, Don.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of Irish by the Grace of God. If you like it, please share it with your friends and family, and check out our website, shows.acast.com/Irish by the Grace of God -podcast. Here you'll find all our social media pages to make contact. If you know of any Irish people living abroad with an interesting tale, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you, and tune in next week. Bye bye.